Hello, my name is Jim Jansen, and I'm presenting a paper published in the ACM Transactions on Computer-Human Interaction entitled, Can Unhappy Pictures Enhance the Effect of Personas? The User Experiment. What we did, we ran a user experiment with 235 participants, and we wanted to test the effect of happy and unhappy images in the personas on the users, the people using the personas, perceptions, engagements, and personality traits that they attributed to these personas. We use a mixed method analysis, both quant-qual and both text and images and surveys. So personas are fictitious people that represent a user segment or a customer segment, and they're presented as a fictional person, but containing the attributes and characteristics of that user segment. They typically contain a picture, and from our literature review, we determined that there was not a lot of research on images and how people selected these images or how personas designers selected these images. Most of the images are stock, all right, whether they're a unhappy or at least not happy face like Drew here, or a very happy face like Jenna here. And so there was not a research on why this is so. Most images appear to be somewhat happy. So what we found from this user experiment was that people's perceptions of the realism of the personas and the pain point severity, because in this experiment we had a pain point that they were having trouble with their computers and internet access and stuff. And that if the end users perceived it more realistic if the unhappy picture was matched with the pain point description, the personas were perceived more realistic. However, they were more empathetic to the happy pictures, and they attributed a lot of positive attributes to the persona with the happy pictures, which you would think would carry over into a more positive the design criteria, engagement with understanding the users and stuff like that. The proposed design ideas, because we did ask the participants to propose a design based on the persona that they reviewed, and that seemed to carry through. That in the description of the design, there was more empathy noted for the personas that had happy pictures than those with not happy pictures, even though the unhappy pictures were perceived more realistic. There were some significant perceptual changes based on the gender and ethnic lines of both empathy and perception of the pain points. And that when I say gender and ethnicity lines, that's the 2x2 of both the persona and the participants. I'll be honest with you though, this kind of correlation was not that strong, but it did exist. So our motivation was that often design studies employ personas, but they don't explain the rationale for choosing the images and these personas. As I mentioned, a lot of these personas are designed with stock images from stock photo banks. And from the literature review suggests there's room for investigation of what is the optimal picture for persona design. Our research objectives, I really encourage you to read the paper. Our focus is on this aspect of happy, unhappy pictures. But we go into a lot of detail. We have, I don't know, a dozen or so hypotheses, multiple research questions, quantitative, qualitative analysis. So I really encourage you to read the paper. But the focus of this was happy, unhappy pictures and whether this correlated with text that everything's okay or we have a pain point. Now in trying to get as realistic as possible in these persona creations, we did both male and female, okay, pictures, leave other gender identities and biological determinations for future research. And then also different ethnicities and also culture. Okay, and all of these are kind of intertwined. It's nuanced. Even in the review process, it was nuanced. I mean, there were reviewers, commenting about, whether it was appropriate to say that, an African American should have computer problems. I mean, it was really interesting. The review comments were kind of an interesting study on this perception of culture and how we relate. So anyway, so we tried to control for all this, and actually, you please read the paper. We show we did, control for both culture and gender identification, both from the participants and the persona creation. It highlights the less happy a person looks, the more realistic it seems, and the more intense its pain points are perceived in the design task, and that came through very clear. Also, it's very interesting that even though just one picture, one snapshot in life, the survey participants extrapolated a whole personality from this, one snapshot. All right. So this momentary mood captured, carried on into this whole story and that scenario that people created. The participants were least empathetic towards personas that were unhappy males. But they found it easier to empathize with unhappy females. And that was across, all ethnicities and culture. So our findings suggest that, some stereotyping does take place. However, it doesn't seem to carry over that we can see in the actual design task. So, maybe there's some, reaction to people of certain combinations of culture and things, but for some reason, at least with these participants, they seem to push it aside and focus on the actual design task of how do we address this person's problem, this person's pain point, how do we make it better? So that's why I mentioned that stereotyping did take place, but it seemed somewhat mild. However, it is there, and so we would encourage personas to kind of play it safe. By ensuring that there's a cultural match between the personas that you would create and the participants that are going to use those personas, that it's not too wide to negatively impact empathy. And, I think that is, reasonable and also, culturally respectful. So anyway, please read the paper. I mean, I just touched on a few things here. So, before you, it's much, you should read the paper. It's fairly lengthy and fairly detailed, and we address a variety of these nuances and things. But with that, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time. So.